All right. Good afternoon, class, or good morning. This is Mr. Larson. Today we're going to be working on activity 1.10. It's going to be a short one because it's going to be introducing us to the second half of the first unit. So remember, our first half we worked on a personal narrative, and the second half you'll see what we're going to be ended up writing a short story, which is going to be a fictional narrative. So the first one was nonfiction, the second one's going to be fiction. So we're going to compare those two today. And as we read through this, I want you to reflect on your understanding of the first essential question, which was, how can change be significant? Okay, so as we look through, there's some words here that are going to be new, some of them you should have heard. Narrative, characterization, remember we talked about that. Characterization is what the author does to help us understand who the characters are. So that's by what they say, what they do, what others say about them, and their description of their appearance and their behaviors and all that good stuff. The setting, that's where when and where the story takes place. We talked about conflict, both internal, remember that's inside problems, and outside problems. Dialogue is talking, connotation is the meaning behind the word, and denotation is the dictionary definition. Similes and metaphors, comparing unlike things to unlike things, and similes using like or as, and metaphors directly. Sensory language, those are all words that appeal to your five senses, and we already finished our personal narrative, so we know what that was. Analyze, sequence, cause and effect, transitions. Ooh, here's one we might not know. Coherence, I think we mentioned that in an earlier lesson, but coherence is how everything fits together. Okay, so the second assessment that we're going to be working on, the first one was our personal narrative. The second one is going to be a short story, which is going to be fictional. So write a story using dialogue, vivid verbs, and figurative language that captures a real or imagined experience. This one's going to be imaginary, including characters, conflict, and a plot with exposition. That's the beginning of the story to introduce it. The climax, that leads up to, everything leads up to the most exciting part, and the resolution where everything gets wrapped up and you have a lesson learned, or the character lives happily ever after, and I'll put that, we're not doing fairy tales, but stuff like that. That's there will be a scoring guide, we'll look at that later. All right, based on your current understanding, there's a chart to fill out. How do you feel that writing a personal narrative and a short story are different? Okay, so for the topics, how can they be different? For the setting, for plot, for characters, and for the dialogue. Okay, mostly that's going to be the stuff like in the short story section is going to be able to have much more fictional, outer space, aliens, all that stuff that kids usually have fun with. With a group, discuss your ideas about how personal narratives and short stories may be different or similar. Write down the conclusions you draw based on, and as we stop here, when it says to draw a conclusion, every year I have somebody that thinks they're going to draw a picture of the conclusion. When it says to draw a conclusion, that means that you are making a conclusion. Okay, so don't get that confused. What do these similarities and differences mean for you as a writer? Do you think writing a short story will be more or less challenging than writing a personal narrative? Okay, so if you're making stuff up, is that harder or easier? Some people are going to, depends on what kind of writer you are. Okay, we'll talk about some of this stuff during our synchronous time as well, but make sure you think about it beforehand so we can have good conversations. All right, thanks guys.